Done.
All right, hi, my name is Jonathan Alarcon, and this is for my political science 285 class, race, gender, and class in government. I'm going to, well, my final paper is about institutional racism in the U.S. prisons. My actual final proposal was the linkage between U.S. prisons, race, and gender. But with a little bit of research, I found out that the actual term is institutional racism. So, as you know, the U.S. prisons is institutionalized, but there is a form of racism within that institution. And with a little bit more research, I found out that there's also racism also extends to sexism, which is gender, and also classism, which is an affliction between classes. It could be upper class, working class, it could be poor, really impoverished class. But there's all those things together. There is connections between the U.S. prisons and how it's institutionalized. So that's my final project. Well, that is what my final project is about. So, institutional racism in prisons. We first have to see the historical development to find out why is it structured in a certain way. And through research, I found out that the first recorded criminal system was against Native Americans. Now, you all know the story. Native Americans were the first peoples here, and when the Europeans came over, they went and they conquered their lands. They killed off, pushed the Native Americans more westward, and took their lands. But remember, since there was conflict between both parties, they were killed, massacred, but they were also imprisoned. And as years progressed, the federal government created the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which was a way to, pardon this this invasion from the past and give them their own lands and their own government. But in reality, the Native people, present time, they live in poverty, in addiction to drugs and alcohol, and also imprisonment. There is Native Americans that are in prison today as well. So that's the earliest recorded history of imprisonment. After Reconstruction era, when the slaves were free, they became free man. Some southern states created this black codes. Now, you all heard of Jim Crow laws, the laws that made it lawful for segregation to occur in these states. But black codes, which I researched, actually targeted African Americans and whatever they did. For example, it was easy to incarcerate black people in the South by some obnoxious law. For example, if you were found drunk in the streets, you'll go to jail. If you quit your job, for example, there were incidents where some black men were employed and they just quit their jobs. That was unlawful, so they went to prison. So it's just these little tiny laws, these black codes, was an easy way for having these black men go to prison. Now, I also went on my final paper. I researched the first recorded history of the juvenile system, because keep in mind, we do have a juvenile system and they are overly populated by black and Latino youth. So as I researched the juvenile system, first it started in 1899 in Chicago. They wanted to have a place where children can go and get rehabilitated if they were abused by adults, or if they were committed of a criminal crime. They didn't want, or the system or the government at that time didn't want the kids to follow that criminal path. So they created this juvenile system, which till today there are 2,225 youth currently in the juvenile system, which they will go into, actually, my mistake, there's actually 2,225 youth currently serving life without parole. Well, I'll get to that first. But for the juvenile system, so it was all a stepping stone. For example, it all started as a rehabilitation center, but now it graduated where these youths in the juvenile system will be trialed or will be tried on an adult court system. So let's say a juvenile was convicted of selling drugs, for example. There are certain states that will trial them as an adult, and then they'll be sent to adult prison. So doesn't that seem like a little odd? You're a young child. You should be trialed as a juvenile and then go through the system and figure out a way, why did you do this, and not follow the path of a criminal, but not be sent to an adult prison, because if they're sent to an adult prison, then they will be around real criminals, adult criminals, and they will teach them how they did things, and when they grow up, they'll become criminals. So, institutional racism in prisons, life without parole. Now, I didn't know this, but a little bit of research taught me that minors that are serving life without parole is actually against international law. It's unlawful for you to have minors serving life without parole. Think about it. You have a child of 15 years old committed a second-degree murder, right? You give them life without parole. When they grow up, how would they be? How would their personality be? I'm thinking they grow up to be serial killers, because they were always confined in an institutional setting, like a prison. And when you grow up, you develop these personalities inside your environment. So you're gonna develop these personalities inside a prison. It's gonna make you more of a criminal. I don't know. That's just how I think. So that's why international law prohibits nations to have minors serving without parole. You can have minors. You can have minors in juvenile prisons, but they have to go out in the free world and discover themselves out, not be confined inside of a prison all of their lives. So, like I said before, currently there are 2,225 youth currently serving life without parole, and the U.S. government should know this. They're breaking international law, but lack of government data concerning life without parole for victims. There's no actual research on how many government research. This is government research on how many minors are serving life without parole. I think that the government doesn't even know that there are children serving life without parole, and they don't even know it's unconstitutional, as well as breaking international law. Now, we are in a class and gender course, so I had to include and find connections with class and gender, which actually intertwined with institutional racism. I found out that the majority of male and female inmates are from the working class. A little bit of research, I found out that black males, they do not make the same as white males in the United States, or the white males have a 2-to-1 ratio of chances of making more than black males in managerial positions, in sales, and think about it. You have these black males that cannot socially and economically progress up the social ladder, right? They're always stuck in the working or poor class. So they will commit to more crime. If you don't have enough to pay for your kids' meals, to put a roof over your head, to have food on the table, you will commit crime. So that's why we do have a lot of poor and working class people inside prisons. They commit crime for the basic needs, which are not met to them, because even if you seek employment, the color of your skin will determine if you land that job or not. Now, I also found out in doing a little bit of research that upper class people do commit crimes as well, but they commit such atrocious crimes. For example, stealing money, stealing taxpayers' money. It could be embezzlement. Big corporations will just take money as bonuses and fly out and send the money out to other countries, and that to me deserves jail time. But it turns out they don't get jail time. They settle. They will offer the federal government money, a large substantial amount of money, to not receive jail time. For example, in my research, I found out that J.P. Morgan and Citigroup CEOs paid off the federal government $300 million when they were found for embezzlement. So paying off the government will get you a jail-free card. So think about it. If the poor and working class people had that kind of money, there wouldn't be inmates. There wouldn't be a real reason why poor, working class, black, and Latinos inmates will be in prison. So that's a little thing I found through research. Another thing is female inmates are being incarcerated more on drug offenses. Yeah, for some reason I found out that there are more female in prison now due to drug offenses. So it could be the selling of illicit drugs, carrying illicit drugs on them, or conspiring to help others sell drugs. I remember the story of a 23-year-old black woman. She had 2 jobs, and mind you, she had jobs 15 miles away, so she will have to travel 15 miles to reach her job, work a 10-hour shift, and then go back home, right? Well, one night she finished her shift, came back home, and as soon as she opened the door, she had 3 SWAT members pin her to the ground and put a gun to her head. And she was bedazzled. She didn't know what was going on until she got to the precinct and they told her that she was conspiring with her boyfriend, which was a drug dealer, to selling illicit drugs to minors and the people in her community, which she was no part of. She had 2 jobs and there wasn't no evidence to show that she was selling drugs. So guess what happened to her? She received 10 years without parole. Stuff like this happens all over the nation. And with a little bit of research, you tend to see what kind of people are convicted of this crime and sent to jail. Black, poor, working class minority, especially poor and working class women. So that's the end of it. You know, in my paper, I have a lot of facts on the juvenile system. I have a lot of facts on class and gender, how it associates with prisons. And at the end, I have to say, I could not find a clear-cut solution to this issue. How can we, you know, find a way through policy or through lawmaking to decline the entry of poor and working class minorities into the prison system? I couldn't find a way, but I guess time will show what these lawmakers will do to hinder this overgrowing process of sending inmates to prisons, especially poor and working class inmates. Okay, thank you.